listening to Strides and Vibes. Whether you're on a long run, a lunch break, or stretching out with your foam roller, welcome to the podcast all about moving better, living healthier, and vibing higher. I'm your host, Mario Bulks, elite running coach, ultra-endurance athlete, and founder of Healthetica Coaching, coming to you from the trails, tracks, and streets of Gadigal country in Sydney, Australia. Each episode, I'll bring in guests from all walks, from coaches, athletes to world-class performers, as well as doctors and professionals in their fields, to unpack their stories and explore the mindset shifts, science, and practical strategies that help us go the distance in running and in life. So, lace up, tune in, and let's move towards a better you, one stride at a time. Hello. It's me again. And as you can see, dear listeners, viewers, there's three of us today. I have two lovely women on the Strides and Vibes podcast. Yeah, welcome to, or welcome back. Hopefully a lot of welcome backers to the Strides and Vibes podcast. So starting on my left is Sophie Gerrity. And in the middle, I think, the way we can see this is Chantelle Smith. And today's podcast is called Power Women on the Run. So we're going to talk about women running, everything that's involved for women in running, what difficulties they might face when they go on a run on their own. We're going to chat about them, how they got into running, who they are, the usual questions. And then, of course, we'll round it out with a few fun questions as well. And somewhere in the middle, we'll talk about how we're going to get girls into running on the trail and running longer distances and looking after themselves. And because there's definitely a boom in Australia when it comes to running, younger people running. I mean, Chantelle and I saw that again this morning at Gore Hill. There's a lot of young people running, half my age, and it's quite nice for me to still run with them on the same track. I'm not the same pace, of course, but so yeah, let's get into it. Sophie, what makes you you?
Bit of everything, really. I am a mum, I'm a photographer, I'm a running coach, and I run really long distances to get away from probably all of those responsibilities.
Nice. Chantelle, what makes you you?
Yeah, I think similar to Sophie, I am a mum, a runner. I am not a coach, but I've been coached quite a lot, which is nice. I think what fuels me a lot is blind optimism. I like to give things a go. Sometimes I bite off more than I can chew, but I'm not scared to fail. So that's me.
That's actually a very good point. And I don't want to interrupt because I've got some more questions coming, but this courage of what we do, what we sign up on. I mean, we've just had that with Sophie. She's just signed up for a big one, pressing enter for Coast to Cozy. We've all done Coast to Cozy. We all know how much we love Coast to Cozy. This is not becoming another Coast to Cozy podcast, but we're all kind of in awe of how this whole operation goes and this running from the beach, from the lowest point in Australia to the highest point of Australia, and how much that means to us running 240 kilometers with our own legs. Yeah. So, Sophie, what got you into running? I mean, I know we're all running away from something or to something, but I don't want to interrupt. What got you into running?
For me, it probably started, I think I've spoken about this on a couple of podcasts. It started as, sadly, probably more of an unhealthy motivation as a weight loss tool. I am very open with the fact that I struggled with an eating disorder for over 2 decades, and it started as another avenue to try and kind of feed that. Ironic choice of words. And it probably wasn't until I moved here and started to explore running more and what my body could do and got, I guess, more help for what was going on for me mentally, that I then kind of really started to understand what my body was capable of. And I realized that if I wanted to be able to push myself and do some of the distances like a Coast to Cozy, you can't exist in both of those worlds at once. Your body just won't let you. And so I started to try and treat my body a little bit nicer and push it in other ways and fuel it properly. And it's now become something that I'm obviously incredibly proud of. But yeah, for a long time, it probably wasn't the healthiest habit, but it's led me to a good place.
That's a great answer. Thank you. I think it's the reason and the whys. Everybody talks about this. You can look on YouTube and everybody and all as soon as the distances get a little bit longer, we have to have a big why, why we do this and why we even started. Chantelle, what got you into running? I know you've been fit all your life.
Yeah, look, I think I played a lot of sports when I was younger. And then as soon as I hit teenage years, everything stopped. And so that's, part of why I am super passionate about trying to get teenage girls staying in sport as long as possible. But it wasn't until I had my second child, so my daughter, and again, probably started from being in a really low place. I'd lost all identity of who I was. I'd become basically, feeding, looking after kids. There was nothing in my life for me. So I was in a bit of a dark place, decided one day that I needed to do something different. Looked at lots of podcasts and different things online. And a lot of it was get outside, get some fresh air, sunshine, big thing. So I went for a walk, first walk in years. It was just me, sunshine, and it felt amazing. Like it wasn't a long walk. It was, up the street and back. And just that little bit of freedom for me left me with wanting more. So decided to sign up for a marathon, what you do. Before I'd even started running, I needed something really big and bold to work towards, I think, to give me that little bit of space of the permission to get out, do the training, really prioritize me. So signed up for the marathon and then started training. Found some amazing groups along the way, running mums, a lot of the girls on the northern beaches. So Sophie, Jenny, and started running with a few really awesome mums, seeing what they were doing, and then just really got the bug. I loved the way that running made me feel. And I loved having a goal for myself, which I hadn't had in a very, very long time. So that was something that, really kept me running after that first marathon. So that's my journey.
Just thank you. I love that. It's just anyway. Signing up for a marathon. Who needs 5Ks anyway?
I don't recommend it to everyone.
I never ran a 5K. My first race was actually a 10K in the UK.
I was going to say, Chantelle, I think it's really important to caveat that not everyone needs to start their running journey with, just going to go do a marathon. Like some people work slightly differently and maybe go, I just want to run for 1 kilometer without stopping. And that's a great journey too.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. Definitely.
There's a lot of people in this world who ran their first marathon and never ran again, because they hurt themselves, I guess, So I know a close friend of mine, or we used to run together, that happened to her. So it's, Just a follow-up question, Chantelle. You tie your running with a goal and the way it makes you feel and having, some sort of structure, I guess, if we can call it like that. Does that tie in with your role during the day? Because I know you've got a full-time job as well, which is something we need to touch on as well. Us normal human beings, we have to work for a living and then we go running whenever we have time. Does that tie in, or do you think, nah, I want that totally separated?
Yeah, I think for me, I need it separate. I'm a manager. I've worked for KFC for 25 years. I manage a big team, and running for me has been absolutely separate to everything in my life. It's almost like running, I stopped being a mum, I stopped being a manager, I stopped being an employee, I stopped being a daughter, I stopped being a wife, and it's really my sacred time of what do I need? So I try and block everything out as much as humanly possible. I try and turn my phone, my notifications. I don't have notifications on my watch. I don't want to know about what's going on in the real world when I'm out running. So I really try and keep them separate as much as possible. The mind always wanders. I mean, you can't go out for a run and not think about everything. I do obviously try and solve the world problems as I'm running. That always kind of comes into play every now and then, but it still gives me enough space away from everything else.
Excellent. Sophie, how do you tie it in with what you do? I know you do a lot of things. How does it work for you?
I feel like I have a lot of overlap in my life. I did my long run on Friday last week, and about 12 Ks into my long run, I get a call from my son's school to talk about his behavior. And I'm like, next time I'm raw dogging it and I'm leaving everything at home so I don't have to have those kind of conversations. I think for me, I find it almost harder to really disconnect and switch off if I know I am completely disconnected. I have that almost, suffer from anxiety and feel like the world is literally going to implode if I'm not contactable. So there's probably a nice, healthy middle ground in there somewhere. Yeah, and I find that a lot of my photography clients kind of overlap in just in terms of, the conversations that we get to have and when we talk about, kind of mindset and performance and intention and things like that. So I feel like it's always me in whatever I'm doing. I like to think I'm pretty much the same person, kind of regardless of what I'm doing. Yeah, I think there's just that kind of overarching theme of who I am as a person, and it just kind of gets interjected into like, well, today it's a person, it's Sophie but taking photos, or it's Sophie going for a run, or Sophie being a mum.
So you just mentioned you think about things on the run, of course. So what's maybe one thing that you, and I like that you mentioned the long run. It was on a Friday, people. We fit things in whenever we can, of course, because I know you've got, mother duties over the weekend and all these other things that go on with kids sports and stuff. So what's one thing you think about on every solo run? That's always something that interests me. Is there, do we go straight to work, or do you go straight to work, or do you straight go to your kids? What's that? When you start your run, what happens?
I think there is always, because I think I'm very lucky with the jobs that I have, that they do, I'm able to kind of fit my run, like do my long run on a Friday, which works well with family life, and my kids play a lot of sport, and so there's a lot of driving people around on the weekends. So I am really lucky in that way. So and I know that because my job is not a typical 9 to 5 and I'm not sat at a desk, I find there's a lot of me having to fit my running into whatever else is going on kind of during the day. So first and foremost, it's probably a case of, right, this is what the run is, and this is the time frame that I have to go and get it done. So is it a case of, okay, am I just running out the front door? And then, the logistics of, am I going to be back in time for the school pickup, or when kids get home and need taking away? I feel like there's a big mental load that I juggle every time I go out for a run. And so that's probably the first thing is kind of, where am I running? Is it am I going to get the distance or the time done, or is it hills or whatever it is? So there's a lot of planning and mapping almost as I'm going. And is it safe to run there? Like, so if I'm running at night, am I running, am I running out the door at night and it's raining, and do I need to take a head torch, and does my husband know where I'm going, and things like that. So I feel like going for a run is not just this like, oh, I'm just going to go out for a jog now. Like, it's part of a bigger structure and a bigger mental load.
This is a good, I think this is a good learning as well for people who don't run, who maybe don't understand what people have to go through, At the end of the day, before I give you the same question, Chantelle, when I calculate how much running is involved in my life, for instance, I mean, I can't translate to someone else, but that's a few hours a week, related to running, plus whatever work we have, plus all the other things. So having to figure out what we're going to do, what we're going to think about, these all add stresses to the whole situation. This is why probably having a coach, this is a podcast where most of my guests are a coach in a coaching capacity, doesn't have to be run coaching, but where this these some good questions come about from your coach. Say, hey, how's everything else going? I can see, because the pace and the heart rate and whatever we can read. I'm not saying who cares, I care, but hey, how did you feel? Oh, I had all these things to think about. So this brings me to you, Chantelle. I know you're trying to disconnect, but you're still thinking about things. So what do you go through? What's happening mentally for you?
Yeah, I think I'm really intentional with every run that I start with a bit of gratitude. I think that's probably the first thing. I take a minute as I start running to either, be grateful with where I get to run. We have some amazing, beautiful trails out on the North Shore. I love to, I guess, just take in like what's going on, like listen to the birds, listen to the rustling of the lizards that are always scurrying along, making sure they're not snakes, but still listening intently. I think for me, I really like to just take a minute, like, have a body check, like, how's the body feeling? Like, grateful that I actually get to run, like that the legs are feeling good, or that, the niggles aren't too bad, that I can run. So I really am intentional to make sure that I do have space for gratitude to start every run. That's probably a big one for me. Then during the run, I mean, it's really dependent on where I'm running. Like, trails for me is where my heart is. Like, it's just like, it's my happy place. And I spend more time just looking around me and just being thankful that I get to spend time in nature. So I probably switch off way more out in the bush than I do when I'm on the road runs and kind of doing the ones that build the base that we know that we have to do. But I find more joy in trails. I think aside from that, it's really, there is mental load. I do try and switch off, but I do also take some time to, plan out, the week, what it looks like. When will I get to do the next run? What do I need to move or juggle, or those sorts of things? I am usually very tight on time, so I don't have a lot of time to faff around. I've got to get out there, get it done, and then I'm usually racing somewhere else to get something, to pick someone up, or to, get to a meeting or whatever it may be for the day. So there's usually a little bit of pre kind of preparing myself for what's coming. But I do always intentionally take some time to just be grateful for that I get to run and where I get to run most of the time as well.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. I have to be honest. I start every race with that. So gratitude, say thanks to the body. There's my little story, a coast to Cozy for a later time. How wet I got my shoes immediately before we even started, because I had to touch the sea, of course, or the water. Yeah, I think this is such an individual thing, why we run, how we operate, how we do things. But I would like to share with the audience how long it takes you, Chantelle, from out of bed to running. Because for me, that's mind-blowing. I need an hour. I need to faff around in the morning. I'd rather get up an hour earlier and then how long does it take you?
I'm very much a efficient person. I don't have a lot of spare time in my life. So my life runs on efficiency of how quickly I can go from one task to the next task and fit it all in. So I have a record of getting out of the door, waking up at, the key is, the speed sessions on a Wednesday, which is I wake up at 5, I'm out the door at 5:06, and then straight off to the session. So I do have everything organized the night before. So, I have the shoes outside, the clothes are already outside the door, the drink bottle's ready to go, the keys are with the drink bottles. So it is very efficient. But yes, I do work on very much how can I make everything fit in as well as I can, because there's not a lot of time spare for us to just fluff around.
Do you know, there's a reason I asked this, right? We always get people, how do you fit it in? How do you get everything in? How do you even, when I'm traveling and people ask, what time did you get up? You're still having breakfast. And I says, yeah, you just get up earlier and get it done, and also in the evening and all these things. I tell a lot of my athletes and people around me in my network that the week has 168 hours. That sounds like a lot. But it soon goes away when you're not very organized, yeah? Sophie, how do you approach this? I know you can't be, in the mornings. I know it's hard for you because you have to do it during the day, but how do you plan it? I'm just, people need to learn how this works.
Yeah.
It's possible. We can actually do it with kids,
Absolutely. Well, I mean, what's the old adage that, if you want something done, you ask a busy person, right?
Correct.
And it's if it is enough of a priority for you, you will find the time. And for some people that looks like getting up, before it's light and getting out and getting it done that way. Like I said before, I'm lucky with my job in that I can juggle things. And if I'm editing at home and I work for myself, so I can go out in the middle of the day and do as Murray and I joke, do my bad water training because it's 35 degrees and I've decided that's the best time to go and run intervals and things like that. So it's very much, knowing that I'm going to carve a chunk of my day out, and it could be the morning, it could be lunchtime, it could be 9 o'clock at night. It kind of doesn't really bother me, and I see it as part of my training for if I'm running an ultra, if I'm running 100K, I'm running at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm running at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm running at 10 o'clock at night. So actually, it's probably not a bad opportunity to have exposure to what that feels like, across the course of the day anyway. I think because I work for myself, I spend a lot of my time in activewear ready to go. So if I'm not out shooting or with clients, then I'm pretty much just dressed as if I could go for a run at any moment of the day, which also helps. So there's a lot less, there's less logistics to have to deal with if you're ready to go and you've all kind of got that almost physical intention of I'm going for a run at 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, whatever it is, and I'm ready to go. All I've got to do is put my trusted yellow hat on and I'm out the door.
That puts a new meaning to dressed for success, huh? Because the success will come when we go and pick up that medal or that belt buckle. We'll think back to, we were ready. So you both are very similar. This is it. There you go, people. Everything's possible. So before we go to the safety aspect and dig a little bit deeper into the whole power women in running or women in running specifically, how often have you changed your run? For whatever reason, when something just didn't feel right, you're like, okay, I'm planning to do this now, and then things happen. How often does that happen?
I would say, and I will kind of say on behalf of Chantelle and I think I'll probably speak for both of us in that we live in a relatively safe part of Sydney for the most part. So I think we're probably both quite lucky in that we're not having to deal with that too much. I definitely have at home, on my local streets, just got a bit of a funny vibe from, utes hanging out on a street that I would normally run past, or, a group of guys somewhere that I just, if I'm doing hills or laps or something, you just see them a few too many times and they're clocking you, and you just get a feeling, and there could be absolutely nothing in it, but I'm always going to trust my gut, and I would rather take the safe approach. When I'm traveling for work or holidays or whatever, and you don't know where you're running, that's probably the biggest roll of the dice in that way, and can get, it's frustrating because I'm trying to get my run done and I'm running down a street and now I feel I have to turn around and go somewhere else and go and find somewhere else, and that's just disruptive. And I also feel like there's a big part of me that's like, I'm not the person that changes what I do for someone else in that regard. Like, I'm not going to stop running and I'm not going to stop my love of running because there's this potential, threat and somebody wants me to feel uncomfortable. So there's a real stubbornness where I'm like, no. But I also have to consider that I want to be safe and I have a family to come home to and, bigger responsibilities than my own ego. But, so on the whole, I would, I'd say there's been enough times I've had to change the course of where I'm running for it to be a consideration, but also I recognize that I am lucky enough that it isn't something that I have to do regularly.
Chantelle, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it definitely does. I feel safe where I'm really comfortable and I run the most. I think the repetition and, when you do it and you do it over again and you feel safe and nothing happens, then that gives you that little bit of confidence that, it is quite safe. But in saying that again, I actually changed my run this morning. So I know we spoke about this morning. I've run at Gore Hill for 5 years, every week, speed session. And I arrived this morning and there was a guy in the dark on one side of the oval that was yelling out profanities that just didn't feel right. So I waited under the lights where there was other people in their cars until he had left before I started my run. So, it's not major. It just didn't feel right for me. So whilst I have safe places, sometimes those safe places can get disrupted. And like I said, it might have been nothing, but for me, it wasn't worth the risk. So yeah, small changes. I think traveling is definitely probably the key for me, which makes me a little bit sad because when I travel to some amazing places, I want to go and explore and see them and, run out on the trails. And by having that, I guess that little bit of concern, I do miss out a little bit, which does make me sad because I'd love to be able to get out there and have the confidence to, to run in a new place and not have to second guess or think about it. So there are quite a few things that I do consider before I run somewhere new and in new places. And I will say it takes a lot, unfortunately, and it's sad.
The problem is we're type A, probably, all of us. I mean, I'm not going to do a psychology check on us, but we're probably, high achievers probably. We want to get stuff done. We all have leadership qualities, no doubt. We've known each other for a bit now. So that allows us to just go through maybe 3 things that people can do when they travel or when they go out on their own. I can add mine, but obviously I want to listen to yours first, Chantelle, because you've just mentioned the traveling bit, which happens to me a lot. I mean, I have years when I'm away 3-4 months. Of course, for me, it's a lot different, and this is why we're talking to you guys today. What are the 3 first things? Or let's just delve into this. What should people do when they travel and in a new place? What's the best trick to do? Let's give people some tools.
The big one I do is Strava.
Yeah, the hot spots, huh? The hot
I look
thing,
at
yeah.
the hotspots. Where are people running? And I think that's probably the first place I start, is where's the popular spots? Where are people running? I also look on Google Maps and I see where are the lights? Where are the, where's the main part of town? Like, where is probably going to be the more safer parts to run in? And I do street view, so I actually look at the streets before I run. So I've got a really good idea of are there lights? Does it, is it a dead end? Is it, can you kind of, I guess, have clear access to what it looks like as well. So they're probably the first 2. The third one I probably use social media as well. So I look for run groups in the area. So I was in Dallas at the end of last year and wanted to run, but again had a few experiences that kind of rattled me a bit. But I wanted to be brave, so I looked at a few run groups in the local area. I looked at where they ran, kind of followed where they ran. If it didn't suit with timings of when I needed to run, I ran with a few run groups as well. So I usually join up to the local area run group and try and jump in some runs as well, just to have a little bit more, I guess, safety around me. So they're probably the 3 main things that I do when I travel, and I travel quite a bit. So that's my hacks of trying to still get out there.
Perfect. Thank you very much. People, jot them down, write them down. This is important. This is for women and men. I mean, I do similar stuff. Sophie, what are your 3 hot tips?
Yeah, so it's, I guess, similar to Chantelle, the Strava heat maps for me is absolute gold, because you have to kind of make the assumption that if other people are running there, and that heat map is nice and dark, so it's been used a few times, and you're probably on to a winner. I will normally ask, if I'm in a hotel or something for work, I will normally ask like a hotel reception, kind of where's any recommendations for good spots, whether it's asking them if it's a walk or something, where's well lit, things like that. And that's how I found out about, so I go to Brisbane a lot for shoots, and you say like South Bank, which is lit up and is amazing. Like, that is probably one of my favorite places to run at night, because it's well lit, it's populated, there's like it's really pretty, and there's bubblers and stuff everywhere. So that's awesome. So I'll normally ask kind of hotel staff on reception for some suggestions as well, because they tend to be locals. And source, Chantelle mentioned it before, Running Mums Australia, amazing Facebook group, amazing network, which is probably not limited to just Australia either. And so I'll always, I'd pop in a note in there to say I'm going to X location. Can anyone recommend a 5K loop, long run on trails, road, whatever my parameters are, and also throw out to them like to say, does anyone want to go for a run? Anyone want to, meet up and join me on my run as well? And then you've got some company and some local knowledge, which is also great.
I like that. That Running Mums Australia. I mean, how many members are there? And there's found some woman, some mum will have been there and said, hey.
Absolutely.
So the only thing I would add is, if you have the opportunity, you get there the evening before, or you're there the day before you want to go for a run in the morning. If there's a running shoe store, I would pop in there and see what's going on. Or on the off chance, hit that running shoe store at 6 a.m. in the morning, and probably someone will start running from there. So that might be the other trick that I would use. But other than that, I think we've hit the nail on the head. Perfect. What's the biggest risk right? I need to get into this now. What's the biggest risk people don't actually realize women have when they go out for a run? Or you can say, look, I don't really want to answer this. I'd rather say an incident that scared me big time.
no.
And then,
I mean, I think the biggest risk is safety, right? Is there's been enough reports in the media of women being attacked, losing their life, not making it home to their family. And unfortunately, every time that happens, that plants that little bit of seed, right? And it takes, unfortunately, I think in life, it always takes something really extreme and something really unfortunate happening for us to sit up and take note and make changes in our life, or whatever it is. I think that's women's safety when we're running is no different. So I think knowing not just about something, happening to me personally or to a friend or whatever, but knowing what you are leaving behind and or it be the lesson that you're leaving behind, the legacy. When I've had some pretty uncomfortable things happen to me on runs, and yes, it's maybe changed my direction, or it's maybe nervous to go out the next time or whatever. And one of the things that I always think about when I get home is, how am I going to talk to my children about this? Because I have boys, Chantelle has boys as well, and I want my boys to grow up knowing, the difference between right and wrong, but I want them to understand how unfortunately, in some instances, even somebody's presence can make a woman feel uncomfortable if it's in the, wrong place, wrong time, and how important it is to be aware of the impression that you give other people, and to what can they do as they get older, because they're not that big yet, but what can they do when they get older to try and break down these barriers a little bit, and to help women feel more comfortable, and to champion women to getting out there. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with inclusivity, and how do we keep teenage girls in the running game and in sport in general. It's such a massive conversation, and it starts with hopefully some really simple solutions.
Yeah, look, it's as fun as it is to talk about running and everything, but we also need to sometimes just touch on the serious subject. So this is why I asked Sophie the question, Chantelle, what's the biggest risk people don't realize when women go out for a run? Yes, what do you leave behind, and so on. So what are your thoughts on this, women? And maybe have an example of where you thought, what, this is out of order, this shouldn't happen, we need to make some changes.
Yeah, look, I think like there's been a lot of instances that I've had happen to me personally, and I think there's also a lot of fear mongering in the media as well, which kind of adds to that and kind of fuels, I guess, that little bit of like reservation you do have around safety, especially as women. I think probably sometimes it's the small things. It's running along the highway and getting yelled at out of a car, which it might seem small, it might seem minor, but when you are running and that's your space and your time and you're in the zone, it creates such an immediate response. Like your heart rate jumps. Like you're like, wait, what just happened? Like it's an immediate shock, the body. And you can see on your heart rate, it spikes. It takes quite a while to then relax again, just, get through the moment. But then the processing that happens with that as well, then it almost completely takes over the whole run. And there's so much processing that goes behind it. I mean, around the fact that, people feel entitled to be able to yell out and scream at people as they're running, no matter what they're saying, whether it's a toot or whether it's, some other not nice stuff. I think then it's the cycle of were there other people in the car? Did their mates say something that, hey, that was a bit dumb. Why'd you yell out? Then I guess it then just creates that narrative. And then I guess you get a bit angry as well. You're kind of hey, I was out there. This is my run. This is my space. I should be able to run along the street without being yelled at or tooted at. So I guess there's a lot of things like that might seem really minor, but it actually has a big impact when it happens. And there's certain places I won't run. I avoid the highway at all costs, because the likelihood that something will yell out or toot, or it is very likely that it'll happen. I'll change what I'm going to wear for my run. So it might be, the hottest day, and I'm if I've got to run close to a highway or where I know there's a lot of traffic, then I'll make sure that I am covered up, which again, they're probably things that might seem minor, but when you actually have to go through that before you go out the door, going, hey, am I going to be near people that might yell out? I'll go get something different to wear, put some extra top on or whatever it looks like. And I think that when you already have a big mental load, actually it adds, it builds, and it makes it hard to still have that freedom. And when you have to constantly think about these extra things that other people in society might do, it's tough and it's exhausting as well. Like it adds that time. Yeah, it's just little things that just build and add up.
Thank you for that, Chantelle, because that's very important. And I think this is the awareness we need to build. Running is a hugely growing sport, and people should be allowed to run where you're allowed to run, when they want to run, and how they want to run, and wear what they want. I've never had to think, what am I going to wear to be tooted at or not, right? And I've been tooted at as well, and things thrown at me and whatever else. But I think as a bloke, it's a little bit easier to get over it than if you the heart rate goes up. Of course, it was aware. I mean, it was in England, it was in Liverpool. People are a bit culturally a bit rougher there, maybe. It's not a thing to run in Liverpool at 7 or wherever I was in Ellesmere Port, and I'm not bagging Ellesmere Port. I spent 4 years of my life there and I loved it. And the local pub will forgive me for saying this, but I think, this is very important to know what impact anything has. Even if people are making a joke. I mean, look, I have that every day. I say a lot, and I'm kind of a straight shooting guy. I also have to think, I might have gone a little bit too far. What impact has that had with that person because I was a little bit straight? Here, these guys don't have this opportunity. They might think I'm an idiot. Luckily, maybe you're right. The guy at the back of the car might say, hey, come on, mate. Hey, what's wrong with you? Hopefully people like that are around. Huh? All right.
I think that's just to touch on that, Mario.
No.
That's part of, I think, we can sit here and we can talk about what the problems are and the experiences that we've had and all that kind of stuff. And that's really important that people feel like they have a voice. But what is more important is, okay, what do we do about it, right? How do we make it better? And I think it's ultimately, it's a bit of a two-pronged attack, because I would go out on a limb and say that 100% of the men that are listening to this podcast are not the problem, right? Because they're runners, they have a similar mindset. They want us to all go out there and be a part of this community. Then they're not the issue. It's like, how do we get the message and how do we change the behavior of the people that are? And so it becomes things like, if you're in the, it's raising the kids that we are raising now to be the people that are going to stand up and be the voice and challenge those kind of behaviors. Incident the other day where I had to run 4K uphill to finish a run. Thanks, coach. And these two, I'm going to say they were 19, 20, 21-year-olds in a ute, came so close to me that I could feel the wing mirror on my arm as they went past. And all I can hope is that one of them, to your point, turned around and went, what the hell did you do that for? Who was that? And so I think that's, apart from your bigger issues of well-lit streets and wide enough footpaths and CCTV and all that kind of stuff, but the everyday, it's about calling out that behavior when you see it and not just letting it slide under the rug, because that's the only way that's going to change in that generation and for it to affect change that we're going to experience. Yes,
people, stop sitting on the fence. Come on, do the right thing. Tell people off. We're allowed to do that. No, I really, really like this. No, thank you very much, both of you, for opening up. And I know you and I, Sophie, will do a little bit more on this subject anyway, out in the community. This is something we're both really passionate about. We're just building this up slowly. So watch this space, everybody. The 3.5 million listeners to the Strides and Vibes podcast, or 4 million by now, I don't know. Let's talk about girls in running. We've spoken about women. How do we get girls? And I like what you mentioned earlier on, Sophie, this transition through teenagehood, if that's even a word, where many people give up sports. Right? For whatever reason. I see that with boys as well. I have trained really talented runners. They hit a certain age, Not interested anymore. Everything else is more important.
I think
How
the
do we?
statistic for girls is something like between the ages of 12 and 16, that about 40, depending on the research that you read in the country and that kind of thing, but generally about 40% of girls drop out of some kind of community sport. And I think they deem that as like sport once a week, which is huge, right? Like what, from what Chantelle said, happened to her, and she's one of the best runners I know, right? Like, it's ridiculous.
What about you, Chantelle? What do you think? What's
Yeah,
what's the key? I mean, I know you went through it and you realized, later on, and I mean, who am I to bloody judge? I started running at 38. But how do we encourage people? Look, I'm a big fan of saying, you mentioned it earlier on, 1K is fine. It's great. Don't compare. Point number one, do not compare yourself with others, your peers. Just go out and do what's good for you and just see how good it makes you feel. Chantelle?
Yeah, look, I think personally, coming from my experience, I think probably the biggest things that impacted me was sport's expensive. Like, sport is not cheap. Like, if you're signing up for a group sport, you get to an age where the parents aren't paying anymore, and it's, do I, join up for the local club for, $300? Do I spend the time working to actually make money? So for me, it was actually a big part was financial. I'd just got my first part-time job. Well, yeah, job at KFC. The outlay to actually continue to play sport was expensive. It wasn't cheap. So I think that was fundamentally a big barrier for me, was the cost to play sport. The other thing as well, I think, is a lot of my friends dropped out. So we were playing, we were in team sports, we were together, and then you lose a big chunk of the team. You lose that connection, you lose that reason to keep playing. So like, it's got to be holistic. Like, we've got to make it cheaper to play sport. Like, I think fundamentally sport should be something that we should fund heavily to keep people in as long as we actually possibly can. I think I've just signed up my kids for soccer, and it's over $1,000 before you even get shoes to get on the soccer field. So, I hold sport really deep, so I'm willing to make that investment. But for a lot of people, that's a really big barrier. And I am very blessed that we can afford to do it. But to have sport that expensive, it's huge. And I think we need to make it, like, I guess, an approach for people that aren't that competitive. When I was growing up, I was great at a lot of sports, but I was never in, the elites, or it was never going to be a career for me. I was never going to make it to the Olympics. It was, it was something that was fun. And I think it got to a stage where you were either great at it and you were going to be, something as a career in that avenue, or you made the realization that maybe you're not the best, and, you go and get a job and earn some money because that's what's going to pay the bills later on. So I think that we need to, I guess, have a lot more encouragement around sport as an avenue for everyone. It's not for the elites. It's not for the Olympians. It's the well-being and the mental side of sport is huge. And if we can get that across now, that like exercise, the body and the mind, the benefits that we have are astronomical. And I don't think it was as well known or promoted when I was a teenager going through that. It was like, sport was either like you were either on a diet, or you were doing sport to lose weight, or you were going to be an Olympian. Like, there was no room left to just enjoy and have fun and be social. And I think that's the era I grew up in. And I hope we can change that narrative. Like, we've got way more education around the benefits mentally. I think for our youth, for sports alone, should be an absolute no-brainer. But yeah, that's just
I'm not a mathematician, right? Although I do love maths. Or an accountant. But investing in kids' sports, or having them very, very unhealthy at 40, 45, 50 years old, I think the government can take their pick and see how much the health service can contribute then, because we're all getting older, as we all know. And many of us also know that our body's only made for about 45 years. So when this model was made, this Adam and Eve model, or whatever people want to believe in, our body was only made when it was created for 45 years. Whoever created it, doesn't matter. And everything else, I mean, we're all in that kind of, I know, Chantelle, you're just a little bit younger, but this is kind of, now we need to start thinking, that starts way back when people are 10 years old. I mean, it doesn't have to be where people are forced or kids are forced, but there's certainly countries out there, and I don't name any, where kids' sport is free. Competition is not even a thing until they're 12 years old. And these countries, funnily enough, compared to other countries, have just cleaned up at the Olympics and the Winter Olympics. So, I mean, there is something in there where, yeah. Would you like to add something there, Sophie? Because I know, obviously, yours, that's fine. Go ahead. This is the platform. Your
Yep.
kids' sport will not be cheap either, I can imagine, yeah?
So I was not a sporty child at all. I did everything I possibly could to avoid any form of exercise. I was also a very unhappy child. So I actually wrote a research paper about this not that long ago, specifically around girls in sport.
Mhm.
And like I said, the drop-off rate does sit around 40%, depending on the research that you read. And a lot of the reasons, especially in that teenage years, Chantelle, to your point exactly, is it's social, and it's about connection, and it's about being with our peers and belonging. And like I have a now teenage boy, and I remember having the conversation with him only probably a couple of years ago, and jokingly saying, oh, when you're a teenager, you're not going to want to hang out with me anymore, and mum's not going to be cool, and you're just going to go want to hang out with your friends because you want to assimilate. And that's a very natural progression and development as to how children become grown adults that go off and function in the real world. And so the belonging and the connection becomes really important. And I think one of the things as a sideline to that is that what Australia is very good at is competition. I grew up in the UK, and I used whatever excuse I could to get out of PE as it was at the time. Australia is very good at competition. We're very good at we've got a great climate, so we are able to do all sorts of sports all year round, indoors and outdoors. And I think it's great because it gets a lot of kids outdoors. It's not great because we have developed this culture where your under sixes soccer team is the next English Premier League. And that's how, the parents on the sideline are yelling at their kids. And it's become this, like, if I'm not a Division 1 player, then you're kind of not worth anything. And what that does, to Chantelle's point, she said it perfectly, it removes the opportunity for these children to find a love of a sport that is about moving your body, about learning about being resilient, learning how to connect with other people, learning to have different friendship groups in different areas of our lives, which gives us a great social and mental balance that we lose when we throw all our eggs into one basket of my child's going to be the next Olympian, and so that's all they can do is this Olympic sport, and I'm going to pour everything into that. There is a reason that Olympians and elite sports people make up the 0.000% of the population. For the rest of us mere mortals, it is going to be much more beneficial for us to find a connection to something that we love to do. And I'm sure all three of us have had the conversations where somebody that we know that, say, doesn't run or maybe does park run religiously looks at the distances we run and goes, oh my God, I'd love to be able to do that. And oh, I wish I could run, but I don't love it, and whatever else. It doesn't matter. If you don't love running, do something else.
Exactly.
Go find rock climbing or go join a team sport or something like that.
Team rock climbing.
Rock climbers make great runners.
Is that a thing? Absolutely.
But I think
apparently, yeah. Apparently,
from a young girl's perspective, when you look at the developmental phase that they're in, mentally and emotionally and hormonally, and you give them the opportunity to thrive in a group of girls who are going through that, and they are able to connect, that can build a lifelong love of the sport, the exercise that they're doing. Chantelle talking about the cost of a sport, it's astronomical. It's ridiculous. And again, we're very lucky that we are able to find the finances to be able to allow our children to do that. And we even talk about it from a running perspective. Like, isn't running supposed to be the free sport? Sorry. Pretty sure I just dropped $1,000 on a UTA miler entry. And that's just that's before I've driven there. That's before I've trained for it, got accommodation, and all the other things. Like, it is not a cheap endeavor. And I think there's so much that can be done and so much that needs to be done. And it's not just about, here's another grassroots program and here's CISA in schools. I look at my son's high school, they have just reduced PDHPE to once a fortnight. these are teenagers. These are kids who, for some of them, that might be the only access to sport and exercise that they get. And now you're saying you can only go and move your body once a fortnight. What's that teaching them in the long run?
Yeah, probably they have nobody who can teach it. That's the bigger problem, probably. Yeah?
Well, yes, you're talking about, kind of, well, they need more time with maths and literacy and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, but you're also in charge of, for those hours of the day, you're also in charge of the mental well-being of my child. And we all know what the endorphins post-exercise do for us. We all know how great we feel after we've been for a run. So yeah, there's a huge gap. You talk about the lack of options for just girls, especially, to be able to go and just play sports and just hang out and kick a ball or whatever it is. Our local soccer club, they had 2 girls teams in a particular age group, and I did a mentoring research session with them, and they took these 2 teams that were both completely social teams, and the club, the overarching soccer club, said, no, you have to grade this year. So they made the team grade, and then they split them up, mixed them up, and had a completely different makeup, and went, right, now you're a Division 1 team and you're a Division 3 team, and made them go and play. And the girls all sat there. These are 14, probably then 13-year-old girls. And they went, but we don't want to do it like that. We just want to play with our friends. Right. No one asked us. They asked the dad coach, and the dad went, yeah, I want a Division 1 player. And then half of them all quit. They all quit. They didn't go back next season.
So running's the thing. Rounding out people. Girls, get into running. Join a club.
Come with us.
You don't need. Just come with us. We're the 3 of us will be out there very, very soon. We'll rounding you up. You've got a few hints and tips how to keep it safe. I think for parents listening in, encourage your kids to go for a run. And just from my perspective, putting my little coaching hat on, it doesn't have to be 5K. It doesn't even have to be 3K. It has to be twice around the block. Do that once a week, twice a week. Enjoy it, and you'll feel a lot better about it. Huh? Before we finish, just a few little questions just to round this out to both of you. Finish the sentence. Whoever wants to go first can go first. Running alone feels like.
Chantelle, you want to go first?
I thought we were going to do a buzzer. Buzz.
Running alone feels like.
Freedom.
Excellent. Chantelle, one word.
I would say empowering.
Excellent. I love that. If you could change one thing around running culture, what would that be after what we spoke about today?
Do you. Just do you. If you want to run to the end of the block, run to the end of the block. If you want to run a marathon, you run a marathon. I think one of the things, I know it's meant to be one word, but I think we're such sticklers for comparison. And I really get upset sometimes, and I hold back with telling people how far I run, because then it comes that whole narrative of I just run this. And it's just, you don't just run anything. You run, you are a runner, you run, and any run, in my opinion, any exercise, in my opinion, is amazing. So just do you and be proud of what you do.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Sophie?
Be intentional. I think it's really easy to go for a run or we can do anything and we can be thinking about a million other things. But if you have a goal, whether that's run to the end of the street, whether that's a 5K, 10K, whatever, bringing intention into what you do will change everything. And it will really allow, we are our own worst enemies. We're the first ones that we put our own barriers up. And I think if you become really intentional about each run, what the benefit, what you're trying to gain from it, and really understand it, then you're present. And when you're present, you perform better. And then you get into a whole bunch of performance mindset stuff.
Perfect. Last one. Road or trail? Easy.
Trail.
Trail. Is that even a question?
Perfect. No.
Road,
I say the
See you later,
same.
bye.
road has a place.
I know.
Have learned to appreciate the importance of road, and I think Coast to Cosy, perfect example. Like our
Yes.
training was
Yeah.
road. It has a place. It absolutely does, but trails bring me joy.
Absolutely. People, do what you love, but do it.
Yeah.
Ladies, thank you so much. Chantelle, Sophie, I really, you mentioned gratitude. I'm full. This was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yes, thank you.
That's it for this episode, folks. As we wrap up, I want to honor the traditional custodians of the land I'm recording on and pay my respects to elders past and present. May we continue to listen, learn, and tread lightly wherever we run. If today's episode sparked something in you, hit that share button, leave a review, or drop a comment on Spotify or YouTube. Every little bit helps keep the momentum going. Or even if you've got a question, feedback, or just want to say hi, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep moving, stay curious, and never forget, showing up is the hardest and bravest stride of all.